Hey YouTube, this is a book review, Trade the Ratio by Karl Ushanka. Um, Karl sent me this book and asked if I would do a book review on it. And so here I go. I sat and read the entire book at one sitting. It was very interesting. And one of the things he wrote in the book, I could sure relate to it, is this is a quote. He says, "An honest review of precious metals requires an objective assessment of the political situation both here in the U.S. and abroad. Rarely is this topic explored in many books on precious metals I've read. Perhaps that is a business decision. Smart authors do not want to alienate half of their potential market. Well, except me." Boy, I could sure relate to that because this book gives some, I think, some really good, honest advice, and I can relate to that because I try my best on my channel to do those same things. Mine and his thoughts are pretty strongly aligned, and I know on my channel I certainly lose subscribers all the time because I speak honestly and openly, and I don't really care about how many subscribers I have. That's not my goal. And this appears to be his mindset in the writing of this book, because a lot of things in here for the average stacker, it goes contrary to what they believe. But I think it's a great educational book. The bottom line is this: you, by the cover, Trade the Ratio, you think it's going to talk strictly about trading the gold and silver ratio, but it's much more than that. It goes into talking about the opportunities that lie both in the gold and silver ratio, but also adding other, as he refers to them as optimistic investments into your portfolio. Stackers and precious metals is pretty much falls into what he refers to as the pessimistic part of our portfolio, and that's absolutely true. Most people that are stacking precious metals, they do so because they have a fear factor or a pessimistic outlook on certain things, which drives them to precious metals. And that has been common for hundreds of years. Gold and silver have been something to protect your wealth. It's a good hedge. And so it is fear that drives people to precious metals. And he talks about, in his book, he gives all kinds of great advice. One of the things I really liked in here is he walks you through doing a risk assessment for yourself to try to really help you understand how optimistic or pessimistic are you, and to help you decide what percentages you should be holding in the precious metals. I have a few pages marked here, and so I'm going to flip through it so I can remember some of the things that I really liked in here. In one section of his book, he talks about, it says, "I ignore comments from the precious metals crowd about the historic silver to gold ratio from the 20th century. Anything before 1971, and arguably a few years afterwards as the markets adjust and stabilize, is misleading, and any investment decision made on this data is flawed." And he's absolutely correct in my opinion, because a lot of people look at the historical hundreds and hundreds of years of gold, or thousands, gold to silver ratios, etc. And it's really, those were all based on back in the days when gold and silver had a set price. Those days are over. We're not on the gold standard. Nobody is on the gold and silver standard. And so now you have to think of that ratio in modern day times. And I certainly agree with that. Let me scoot through here. Another section, he goes into talking about if an investor only trades physical metal on the spot ratio, he will get a return worse than stacking. He must adjust his ratio triggers to compensate for the skewed physical commission fees. I've done a video on that talking about the real gold to silver ratio numbers, and a lot of people don't think about all of the various fees that are associated when you trade gold to silver or silver to gold. And he covers that really well in his book. He talks about setting your triggers. He has different charts and graphs and worksheets that can help you decide what you believe, if you are going to trade gold to silver ratio, what those triggers should be for you. I think he does a really good job on that. Another section he has is determining your fear quotient, or what type of risk can you stand. And he talks about fear in the book, and as he says in here, it says, isn't that what precious metals ownership is all about? And the reality is, it is. Most people, again, they stack this stuff because they're afraid of something: collapse, lack of trust in government, lack of trust in stock markets, etc. And he goes on to really help you determine how optimistic or pessimistic you are, and how to set up your own ratios of how much you should own based on that. He talks about stacking. By definition, they just sit there, and they can remind you of your anticipated bad times ahead. And that is absolutely true. If in a lot of his book talks about trying to help you understand how you can take advantage of some of the other stock and paper options out there, use that in your optimistic portfolio, and then use your pessimistic portfolio for your stacking. Because if all you're doing is stacking, you're missing out on a lot of gains that have been out there. And a matter of fact, he says, owning precious metals as a hedge makes all the sense in the world to me. Holding so much that your stack reminds you every day of what you're missing out on is horrible. And boy, that's a lot of what I've been trying to preach to people is, I do stocks, I do some papers, tradings, and some things that a lot of people in this community are really against. And this book really talks about how both are important, and how when one goes up, the other goes down. And it's just a really good read. I highly recommend it to everybody, anybody out there. I don't know Karl at all. I don't think, and a matter of fact, he mentions numerous stackers and channels in this book, and I'm certainly not one of them. So I'm not promoting this book for any reason other than my honest opinion that I think he did a really good job, and I think that 95% of the stackers could really benefit on reading this, and probably reading it 2 or 3 times and let it soak in, because I hate to see people missing out on good opportunities and putting all their eggs in the precious metal basket. It's fun, it can be a good hedge, but there's some great investment opportunities out there that I think a lot of people aren't taking advantage of, and his book gives some good advice on how to do so. So anyway, that's it, YouTube. Thanks, Karl, for the book, and hope you all, if anyone out there has read it, put in your comments or your book review down below. Y'all have a good one. Bye.